Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is TB Sky, and I've got a runny nose and a sore throat, and we need to talk about the New York Excelsior. New York Excelsior are an Overwatch League team. They will be competing in the Overwatch League when it kicks off in the new year, and this is their logo and their branding. This was initially released when the team was announced, and they were given a fair bit of gentle-spirited ribbing from the community over their design choices. Their unusual abstract logo and kind of weird, indistinct branding, and they ended up at the bottom of a bunch of branding tier lists when the first articles about this stuff came out. I was mostly happy to just leave them alone and not really join in until something happened today that has made me feel the need to do a video with a few gentle criticisms. This is an article on Esports that was released that tells the story of the New York Excelsior branding. I say it's an article, it reads a lot more like a reworded press release, but that's just, you know, how things go in the sports industry sometimes. And I'm sure you've already caught sight of the primary attraction here. It's this. This is the official New York Excelsior branding as designed by Mother Design. Stare at that for a while. Just look at it. Take it in. Let it soak into your eyeballs, and then tell me how you feel. Because if you're anything like me, you don't feel super great, because it's kind of unpleasant to look at. And there's a reason for that. This is an optical illusion, and it's a very simple optical illusion. We've got diagonal lines going one way and diagonal lines going another way, and where they meet, where they hit each other, our brains imagine a very sharp dividing outline. Although there is none. Like, there is no line around these things making them appear. They just sort of appear as a natural consequence of the way our brain parses images. And here's another visual illusion. One I found just Googling around. It's the kind of thing you see pop up on Facebook and Pinterest, usually with a few emojis and oh my god, mind blown attached to them. The conceit of this particular visual illusion, let's zoom out a bit so you can see the whole thing, is that the squares in the middle of this image are actually perfect squares. There's nothing wrong with them. They are completely normal, perfect squares, but the jumble, the mess of weird perpendicular diagonal black and white lines surrounding them make them appear to be crooked. This happens because our brains, our eyes, have trouble parsing these types of images. They have trouble putting them together correctly. They have trouble understanding what they're looking at. Something about it just messes with the centers in our brain, or the visual nerves that perceive images and are supposed to tell us exactly what we're seeing. There's tons of these illusions out there, usually involving some kind of arrangement of contrasts or black and whites or colors that causes the image to seem to move or seem to appear to be something other than what it is. So here's the New York Excelsior logo again, the branding, the official branding that they want you to have in your mind when you think about New York Excelsior. And an optical illusion fundamentally is unpleasant to look at. It's something's wrong with it. It messes with our brains. It's not parsable. We can't really see what it is, so our brains have to kind of try and fill in the blanks, and something short circuits and we get an image that is not what it is. It looks like something other than what's really there. They are unpleasant to look at. Now, I will not pretend that I am branding or advertising expert. Maybe this is a P.T. Barnum kind of thing where all publicity is good publicity, and since I'm doing a video talking about their logo, it's working as intended. But nonetheless, when I think of how branding is supposed to work, I don't immediately think of make your audience get a headache, make your audience feel unwell from looking at it. And that's really my primary criticism that I want to pull up here, is that it's not pleasant to look at. It's not nice. It's not that you can't be experimental and bold and abstract and avant-garde in your branding, but at the very least you shouldn't antagonize your audience with an image that is actively unpleasant to the brain, which is what this is. So that's weird. So that's my first and primary criticism of the branding that they've come up with, is that it's really just not very friendly to its audience. So I looked into the article, or again, press release rather, and I looked into some of the justifications that the design team offered up for why they chose to do what they did, and as I read, I came up with another couple of criticisms. Excuse me, sore throat. While designing the NYXL identity, we looked at a lot of references that spoke to the iconic scale and ambition of this city. But we were equally inspired by the ad hoc texture that exists at street level almost everywhere you look in New York, Mother Design creative director Jason Miller told Esports. The crosswalk markings, the construction barricades, the striped Con Edison steam vents. We saw it as a really powerful visual language that is almost poetic in its functionality. All of it led us to a story that is as much about ambitious heights and achievement as it is about the boldness and the no-nonsense energy that drives the city forward every day. Everything from the subway map and the New York grid map served as inspiration. Both are just such integral parts of the way New York ebbs and flows. It's such a constant thing. It's this constant transfer of energy along all the lines, and we felt that bringing that to life in the logo really spoke to that. New York is a city where anyone can come and prove they have what it takes to thrive, Gervasoni said. Every day is a little battle to take on, just like in Overwatch. Through it all, though, Gervasoni believes there's a kind of everyday heroism or heroic optimism that pushes forward life in the city and in the game. So, my second criticism, and by the way, this side note, but this image right here with the flashing colors and the flashing light going on, don't ever do that to people. Like, I'm fine looking at it, but epilepsy is a peculiar condition, and shit like this can set it off in people. I'm sure it's just some sort of a mood or design fanciful thing, but don't ever do this at an event, like have those things flashing colors on and off. It's a bad idea. Do not do that. Anyway, my secondary criticism is that the design process, the things that this design is trying to evoke, and by the way, I think it fails at it. I don't think it evokes crosswalk markings, construction barricades, or subway maps. I think it evokes chaos. Absolute chaos, because that's what I get when I look at it. But why was it trying to evoke these things? Why was it trying to evoke almost this weird working class vision of the city from the street side? Because it's a little... Okay, so the other teams mostly, and the article notices this, while with Mother New York Excelsior is building a community that speaks to the New Yorkness of diversity and influence coming together. By the way, diversity and influence, there's no diversity here, there's two colors. That doesn't scream diversity to me. Anyway, let's see. With its design forward logo, Excelsior is innovating in a field where other franchises stuck to traditional sports branding. Mother Design is trying something new with its Overwatch League design. There's a reason why the other franchises stuck to traditional sports branding, and that is what you're branding isn't a clothing line. What you're branding isn't a mission statement about New York, the city. What you're branding is an esports team. And this is the crux of my secondary criticism, is that this branding seems to have been designed for design's sake. It seems to have been designed for art, but not for the purpose for which it is intended. It is not very functional, as indeed evidenced by the fact that it is a visual illusion, an optical illusion that is unpleasant to look at. It's also seemed to be primarily inspired, excuse me for a sec. I really shouldn't do videos when I'm a little sick. It also seems to be primarily inspired by things that have absolutely nothing to do with the thing that the logo is supposed to be for, which is esports. And I'm not saying that every single logo needs to be some kind of cartoon mascot lifted wholesale from a third-tier football team or whatever. But there's a reason why the other teams drew into that inspiration. There's a reason why the other franchises stuck to traditional sports branding, is that they are trying to be sports teams. They're trying to tell anyone who looks at them, anyone who comes to see, that this is sports, this is what we do. It's part of the communication between the brand and the viewer, is that, what are we about? Well, we're about this. Oh, that looks like a sports brand. It must be a sports team. Yes, successful communication from the viewer to the brand, that the brand has told you what it is about, what you should bring with you when you go there. Right? So when you see a sports mascot, yeah, they're hokey, and they're kind of dumb, and they're a little bit old-fashioned and silly, and, you know, they're not really cool, necessarily, but they tell you what you should expect from the thing that you're going to watch, which is sports. This doesn't. It doesn't really, for me, evoke the subway map with the crosswalks or anything like that. It doesn't evoke New York particularly. I don't know why the color blue particularly is supposed to be associated with New York, especially. I don't know that any color really is. But there's only 2 colors in the logo, so there's really no diversity. It might look like a crosswalk, but crosswalks aren't blue either. It might look like a subway map, but only for a subway map from hell. I don't know what they were thinking of when they did this, except that they wanted to do something that was weird and abstract and avant-garde and kind of peculiar and unusual, but they didn't seem to want to design a logo for a sports team. Anyway, that's the crux of my criticism. This is pretty much just a rant video in order to get some of my own thoughts out. Let's stop looking at that now. If you have any comments, you should feel free to leave them down below. If you have a like, very much appreciate people leaving those on my channel. They're just nice. Those thumbs ups are pretty. I mean, if you didn't like it, if you think I'm stupid or if I'm wrong about shit, then there's a dislike button as well. But you don't need to leave that in a comment because I'll just delete it. And yeah, I guess my name has been TBSky, and I will see you, I suppose, in the next video. Jesus Christ, I think I saw Cthulhu in there.